Welcome to Concussion Fix Minisodes. These bite-sized clips are taken directly from our full podcast episodes to give you direct answers to your specific questions about persistent concussion symptoms and recovery. Short, clear, and packed with value. Now remember that these clips are not medical advice and you should always speak with your healthcare provider before attempting anything you hear on this channel. Let's go.
This is maybe a question for Melinda. It's, or all of you. Because concussions are invisible, really, and the symptoms can kind of go on, I'm finding it difficult to get the support I need from my family, because they've never been through it. And I think a supportive environment is probably one of the biggest factors to psychological and just recovery success. And, they don't understand really. And I think it becomes more difficult as things, as symptoms continue to go on. Things are more expensive and just still getting treatment. It's something that's not like just you do it, it's done, and it's over. It's going on for a period of time. Um, and it almost seems like recovery is a full-time job, keeping up with going to neck, going to a psychologist, making sure I exercise every day, meal prepping, everything. So, but life goes on, like especially a life with small kids and a family. And so I'm wondering, how do you really get this, or how do you explain to your family, or what tools can you use to get the support you need from them when it's hard, right? Like having a concussion is really freaking hard. It's hard on me and it's hard on my family. Um, so any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, the first one is we did a live on this because it is such a big topic and important topic for everyone, and a question that makes a lot of sense, and a lot of our members have. I think Nikki's always on the ball here, and she put it in the chat box for you. It was the supporting loved ones um, on YouTube. I think we did a live as well, Nikki. If the
Yeah,
support systems.
that's the
You wanna make
same.
that as well.
Yes. Yeah, so I did one on like supporting loved ones and then we put it on YouTube
Okay,
so that other
that's yours.
people so that people could send it to family members rather than having them try to log into the platform and view it there. But I think you've done it before
I've
too.
done one too, yeah, supporting, support systems or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So I
great.
would I would encourage you to send that YouTube link to your spouse and other family members that you want, and then also log into Melinda's section in the resources and check out her video there too.
Mhm. Yeah. The fact that we've done 2 lives means it's an important topic, right? It means that there's, this is a common question we get from a lot of members. It's really difficult to navigate, right? We think about before concussion, there's these sort of subconscious expectations that people have of you, your roles that you fill, and hats that you wear in your family, at work and other places. And sometimes following concussion, those roles can't be, fulfilled in the moment. So, kind of figuring out how to adapt to that, as you said, sometimes these symptoms can be invisible, which makes it hard for your loved ones to see how much you might be suffering or what's going on inside. And, the number one thing I always share is try to focus on communicating your needs. So sometimes we try to explain what's happening, and that's also very important, but can be a little bit of a longer journey. But if you can communicate your needs, right? So, for example, I'm having a really hard time meal prepping. Can we work together to figure out how to do meals for the kids? So, there's a specific request you're having in that you're identifying a need for your partner or for your family members, that you're struggling to meal prep, for example. Now, sometimes, because concussion is so emotion filled, we can come at our family with, this is why I'm feeling this way and it's so hard living with these symptoms. Absolutely, that's valid and needs to be validated too. But it doesn't always translate into your family or loved ones understanding what the need is. So the best way to sort of communicate and help shift sort of challenges you might be having in fulfilling certain roles and responsibilities is trying to figure out how to communicate it as a need versus an understanding of what you're going through. So you can kind of see those two things as being separate. Both are equally as important, but as far as getting some support, usually if we can identify a need, that goes a little bit better than if we're trying to help our partners and loved ones understand the emotional aspect of what we're going through. So that is equally as important, but a different skill set. So that may be something else, as we've talked about in our social support systems. Nikki put in here, it was in May 5th, 2022. I believe it's there that we talk about, how to communicate and help receive some empathy and validation for what you're going through, right? Empathy.
Right. That's the piece I feel is missing. Yeah.
Yes, so that one's a little bit different in the sense of not everybody understands how to be empathetic, or know how to support you based on what your needs are about how you're going through your concussion and what's been troublesome for you. So as far as empathy goes, sometimes I invite clients to show the video "It's Not About the Nail." That's on YouTube, and it's pretty funny YouTube video that essentially just speaks at a natural tendency for partners and loved ones and family to want to fix when somebody they love is hurt or suffering. And so it talks about how to navigate that, right? And I don't want to give it away because it's actually pretty humorous. I'll let you explore it on your own. Called "It's Not About the Nail," and it is really an illustration of how to provide empathy to someone who's suffering.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say what your greatest need is. And I guess because for me the most distressing piece still is really the just really mood dysregulation, and then that lack of empathy, right? Because like I don't like having mood dysregulation. My husband and kids definitely don't like me having mood dysregulation. They don't they're tired of me not having mood being regulated. But I guess because the biggest piece is psychological for me.
Mhm.
um it doesn't seem really straightforward about, it's not like something concrete like, oh, I need help with food or I need help with this. I don't really know what the need is there. Like my need is to be regulated, which is not something that they could do for me.
Sometimes it might just be patience, right? Communicating that need for patience. Hey, mom isn't feeling right now. I'm going through something that's hard to see on the outside, but on the inside, I'm just not feeling quite right. I wonder if you can be patient with me. I don't know how old your kids are, but uh,
2 and 5.
yeah, so, that's a lesson that they have to learn how to be patient sometimes too, and, of course, I'm not a child psychologist, so I can't really comment on what the evidence-based strategies would be for that, but oftentimes it's sort of communicating, letting them know that's how you're feeling and, "Can you be a little bit more patient with mom?" Or, "It might take mom a little bit longer to do things." Sometimes kids that age even are willing to help, right? They especially 5, right? They're okay to help and they can kind of grasp that concept. So when you're going through something that maybe doesn't have a certain, uh, end point to it, it might just be helping them to understand, how to go about it. At 2, I don't know, probably not gonna be effective, but
It's more the spouse, just kind of like a constant questioning of, oh, is naturopathic like not really knowing, not really having looked it up, not really having done the research or been to all the informational sessions, and just kind of being like, oh, I don't really know that this is the way to go, but I don't really know where you should go. Just like a lack of empathy and support,
yeah.
wanting to fix it but not knowing how, and not necessarily offering helpful advice.
Yeah, so that might be, watching together that YouTube video, "It's Not About the Nail," maybe communicating that patience right now when, you can't necessarily regulate your emotions in the moment. And then for you, kind of looping back to that recovery mindset and saying, "Are there any skills in here that I can use to to ground myself when I'm around my family? What can I do to support myself in these moments when I'm around my family?" And, it's not one answer here. It's going to be, peeling
Right.
back the layers of the onion and figuring out what skills and tricks and tools are going to be really helpful and supportive for you to navigate this with your family. So hopefully we've given
Right.
you a couple resources to explore.
Okay, thank you.
Just coming at this from the male perspective. Because
Go for
Thanks.
it.
yeah, because you know, we tend to be very logical and we tend to like question, is this right? Is this not right? What's the best approach? Um, so I think what would be really helpful from your husband's side is being able to understand what what concussion is and some of the science behind it. And so my recommendation on that would be the one that I did on the one that's on YouTube, for loved ones, because I really go into the science of why those symptoms are there and then what the treatments are and provide evidence on that. But another good idea would be to convince him to sit through the first kind of 2 modules of the program. So the one that talks about the science around concussion, right? What happens inside the brain when a concussion occurs, and then the persistent symptoms, because I go into each of the 5 drivers.
I think that's the difficult part because I'm like, hey, what would really help me is for you to understand this. I've sent the videos like, oh, I don't have time to watch those. Or, I've read a book, The Invisible Disability, about this woman who had a concussion, like, oh, I don't have time to read that. Just this feeling of, and I was like, if I had cancer though, like, you would look up that kind of cancer. And he's like, oh yeah, totally. And
Mhm,
I'm like, well, this isn't really just a lack of, like, I'm saying, hey, I need you to watch this, I need you to read this, like, this would be really helpful to me for you to kind of get a grasp on what's going on, so you know why I'm doing the treatments I'm doing,
right,
instead of just taking my word for it, but just not really participating as far as actually doing any of those, or that empathy piece of like, oh, I don't have time for that, like, that doesn't make me feel supported at all, you
right,
know.
right. I would try, like, what what my wife does with me if she wants me to do something is she will, like, because if she sends me a book, I don't have time to read a book, I'm not doing it. Um, but if she says, "I really want you to see this," and she sits down with me, kids are in bed, rather than, like, normally our routine is we throw on some Netflix or something and just chill. But if there's something that she feels is important, she says, "I want you to watch this with me." And we'll sit down and we'll watch that. And so I think that might be a strategy that you could use just to like get him to understand what those pieces are, because if he's not fully on board with what you're doing and doesn't understand the science behind it, he's going to be questioning like, "Oh, naturopathic, why are we spending money?"
Yeah, yeah, I feel like I'm swimming upstream.
Right, but if he understands that and realizes there's a lot of science behind what we're doing in this, he might then say, "Okay, like, I'm behind you now, I'm supporting this," right? Because like, we come at it from a very logical perspective, and
Right.
we question everything, and we wanna make sure that we're not letting our family get taken advantage of, and they're not needlessly spending money on shit that doesn't work and whatever. So I would suggest just being like, "Look, I really want you to sit down. We're gonna watch this. I need you to understand the science behind it so that I can get you on board with what I'm trying to accomplish."
So the loved ones video.
The loved ones video is a good start, but even just if that doesn't go deep enough, I can't remember because it's been so long since I did it, but if that doesn't go deep enough into kind of the science, it may be worthwhile watching, like, what happens in the brain when the concussion occurs, and then going through the 5 things that cause PCS, because I really break down each one of those, like, in great detail, and if he gets that understanding, he might then just be like, "Okay, now I get it," and then he's just behind you rather than in opposition to you constantly questioning everything you're doing, because that's just another uphill battle you have to fight. But if he understands as well, now he that's why I made the video like that. I made it so that it would be more, like, explanatory for the people so that they understand, like, why are you doing the things you're doing, because there's a lot of science behind it, and that's why it works, and that's why I'm doing it.
Mhm. I think that's a great suggestion. One is, doing it together, right? And really emphasizing that point of sitting together and seeing if he could listen or watch certain things together. because that also, brings the presence there for the two of you to really focus on what you're doing. And I also like the point around the education, right? Really, that understanding of what's happened to you from a science-backed or evidence-based perspective, and seeing if that helps make a shift, right? And trying those two things before, seeing whether or not there's a willingness. And then if there's not a willingness by our partners, then we're having a different conversation, and we can always loop back on that.
Okay. Thank you guys. That's really and so and well, should I watch the nail video with him too?
Yeah, it's a humorous video, so it really brings some lightheartedness to sometimes an expectation around, "I want you to be empathetic to me," but it just gives some lighthearted humor to, how to approach empathy.
Thanks for listening to this Concussion Fix Minisode. If you want to learn more about the causes of persistent concussion symptoms and how to fix them, join one of our upcoming free 90-minute patient webinars. Details and sign-up links are in the description. You'll see that with the right approach, recovery is possible. See you there.